Right. So we're now 3 episodes behind on Lee Anderson's Real World. I'm really sorry to the die-hard fans out there, by the way. Uh, what can I do? What can I do? I'm busy. But, we're going to catch up with it this week, I promise. Without further ado, let's just get straight into it.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World, and tonight some brilliant guests. We've got the Right Honourable Mark Francois, MP, a political legend, Vince Cable, another Right Honourable. We've got one of the best sports personalities this country's ever produced, Fatima Whitbred. We've got Kelvin Robinson from GB News, and also a legend in his own lunchtime, Gary the Cabber. But first, the news.
I mean, there's a couple of thoughts already springing to mind. This thing is a pre-record. So why he's allowed to make mistakes like saying pronounced instead of produced is quite astonishing, really. Just do a retake. Perhaps this was a retake. Dear God. And also, Gary the Cabbie has now become Gary the Cabber. Now, I don't know where Cabbie and Cabber are in the ranks of cab drivers, but I suspect Cabber is a demotion. So perhaps he took a dodgy route last week when dropping Lee Anderson off at the three Colts. Colts, that's right. Yes. Anyway, moving on. Some of you may have already heard the story of why Lee Anderson, or what led to Lee Anderson leaving the Labour Party to join the Conservative Party. I have heard this story before, quite a few times, on various platforms. The story doesn't seem to change much, which would indicate one of two things. Firstly, it's true. Secondly, he's told it so many times in his own head, to him it's become true. Let's have a listen.
Now then, a lot of people ask me why I left the Labour Party to join the Conservative Party. Now, the angry mob on Twitter will make their own minds up and talk all sorts of nonsense, but here's the facts from me. This is the person that it happened to. I was in the Labour Party for many, many years, and it was like being in an abusive relationship being in the Labour Party. I was a Labour councillor in the village of Huthwaite in Ashfield, where I'm from. Now, I got into hot water about 5 or 6 years ago over some problems with the local travelling community who visited my village on several occasions. My residents were furious. There was damage, there was thieving, there was all sorts of nastiness going off. And I told the Labour group we've got to stop this from happening. They disagreed, and they refused to put barriers up to stop the travellers returning. I took the law into my own hands, and I blocked this local beauty spot off to stop the travellers returning. My community actually loved me for it, and the Labour group hated me. But this was the same Labour group who were more interested in talking about Palestine and talking about poverty in Ashfield. This is the same Labour group that when Fidel Castro died, they wanted to open a book of condolence at the local council office. Imagine that. What a bunch of lunatics. Absolutely, absolutely berserk. But look, you know, in 2018, things come to an end when I was in a Labour group meeting and one of the Momentum members said to me, with his Corbyn T-shirt on, "Anderson, have you ever read the works of Karl Marx?" To which I said, "No, I've not." He said, "Well, why don't you off then and join the Conservative Party, Tory boy?" So I stood up in a room full of people and I looked at him and I said, "You know what, that's not a bad idea." So I left the room, I joined the Tory Party that week, and then 18 months later, I was his Conservative MP. That'll teach him.
Now, of course, that was a very Lee Anderson story to suggest he left the Labour Party because of Palestine, travellers, Fidel Castro, and Karl Marx. But there may actually be some truth in what he's saying. He was suspended from the local branch of the Labour Party after receiving a community protection warning by the council for using boulders to block members of the traveller community from setting up camp at a site in the area. The following month, Anderson defected to the Conservative Party, which he stated was a response to the takeover of the Labour Party by the hard left, particularly through the left-wing political organisation Momentum. And here is an article on the BBC News website from March of 2018. Here's Lee Anderson and his colleague Chris Barron, and they both left the Labour Party to join the Conservative Party, and they claim Momentum were responsible for their decision to quit. Mr. Anderson, who was handed a 4-month suspension when he hired a digger and placed concrete blocks to stop travellers illegally camping in a car park, said, quote, "The Labour Party has been taken over by the hard left, and Momentum in particular, and I will play no part in that. It's been a very difficult decision to come to." And there was certainly an implosion of the Labour Party in Ashfield. As you can see in the 2015 Ashfield District Council election, the Labour Party won 22 seats, with a vote share of 35.1%. Come to 2019, they lost 20 seats, winning only 2, with a vote share of 18.2%. A horrendous implosion, mainly at the hands of Ashfield independents. So, yeah, it could well be the case. Momentum members had a book of condolence for Fidel Castro. It could well be the case that Lee Anderson was slated by Momentum members of the council for not having read the works of Karl Marx. Who knows? We will never know. All we have is the word of Lee Anderson, and that's an extremely dangerous thing to trust. Moving on. Right, so you may have seen this part circulating on social media already, but this is 30p Lee and fellow Tory MP Mark Francois getting their panties in a twist over being held to account by Steve Bray, either outside Parliament or on Whitehall. Now, of course, this is a pair of fascists we're talking about, so they are deeply offended anybody dare question their authority. Oh dear, so let's just take a look.
I'm going to move on a little bit now to public nuisances, protests, the Public Order Act. We have a chap outside Parliament, and I know you've had a few run-ins with this Stop Brexit, Steve, and I know he was probably loitering around when back in the day when Vince was in Parliament. This is a man who I think has gone too far. He tends to hang around on Whitehall. He harasses Tory MPs on a regular basis, yeah, and you've faced the brunt of it on several occasions. We talked about Steve Bray, the Stop Brexit, Steve. I think what we're going to do is actually just watch a clip from where he accosted me yesterday on Whitehall.
You are liars, cheats, charlatans and fraudsters.
What's that?
Mr. Anderson.
What is that?
That's Sylvia. Well, you got a problem with Sylvia?
No.
Do you want to beat her up?
No.
Oh,
no.
good. You want to beat everyone else, sir?
Anyway.
What's this about your second job with GB News? I won't take a second job.
Here you go, I'll take a first job.
So, Mark, you saw the clip. You saw him in action. It's not the first time. What should we do with this man?
Look, on the one hand, we don't want to live in Putin's Russia. We believe in, the right to democratic protest.
Yeah.
But this goes way beyond that. This is a man who, pursues people down the road. He's extremely rude. He thrusts a camera in their face. He's trying to get a rise out of you, isn't he? That's what because he thinks that would make, for a good video clip.
God almighty, how precious are these two clowns? Firstly, Steve Bray has a job. He is a self-employed coin dealer or coin collector. So Lee Anderson's pop at him for not having a job isn't at all accurate. Secondly, that exchange between Steve Bray and Lee Anderson appeared to be fairly jovial. Anderson wasn't just taking a barrage of verbal haymakers. He was giving a bit back too, as he always does. Like the time he nicked Steve Bray's hat. This couldn't be any further from harassment. This is a pair of elected members of Parliament wandering around outside their place of work. They are in public. Thus, they can have absolutely no expectation of privacy. You can just see it is absolutely killing their respective inner and outer fascists to have to deal with being held to account by Steve Bray to the extent they are actually accusing him of committing criminal offences just for approaching them on the street. Imagine being so arrogant as to expect privacy in a public space when you are an elected member of Parliament.
I mean, you are more than a match for him. I mean, your answer yesterday to him about, second jobs, well, you haven't even got a first one, I thought was great. But, so normally you win these contests hands down, but the question is, should he be doing it in the first place? And I think he crosses a line between democratic protest on the one hand and intimidation and harassment on another. And on a light-hearted note, I understand you've tried to get him on the show in the past.
Yeah.
Well, if he ever has the nerve to take you up on it, let me know, and I'll come into the studio and stand behind him with a megaphone and shout all over him and see whether he likes it. I'll give him a bit of his own medicine.
Oh my goodness. Need I remind you, Mark, you are a member of Parliament. Your standards are supposed to be higher than those of mine and Steve Bray, because guess what? We have no power. And he speaks about Steve Bray crossing the line between democratic protest and intimidation/harassment. Well, you should have noticed by now there is absolutely no form of protest these Tories approve of. They don't appear to mind Just Stop Oil protesters being assaulted. They delighted in members of Republic being arrested prior to the coronation of Charles, whilst unloading their van. Tories have even suggested Rishi Sunak's daughters will struggle to sleep at night following Greenpeace draping Sunak Manor in black curtains. And now Steve Bray is harassing and intimidating a big bruiser like 30p Lee outside Parliament. My God, it's completely pathetic. What a pair of losers. Moving on. Okay, it's time to join Gary the Cabber. And to the people who have whinged at me for being mean to Gary, look, he is reinforcing the demented views of 30p Lee. So as far as I'm concerned, he is fair game. And I'm going to continue to give him the full treatment until he stops this nonsense. Let's take a look.
But they don't come much realer than Gary the cabbie. Join us next.
Oh, he's a cabbie again. Ah, his demotion was brief. Well done, Gary.
A bit of common sense. He's a legend in his own lunchtime, but you know what? He always seems to be spot on. So once again, I'm joined by Gary the cabbie, the legend that is Gary Fisher. Gary, earlier on today, I was speaking with sporting legend Fatima Whitbred, talking about the challenges that she had in early life. Absolutely amazing story. But he's sort of, the dedication and hard work she had to put in was you know, just formidable, really. But it gets you thinking about...
Just quickly, I'm going to provide some context. Prior to this segment, Anderson spoke to former world champion javelin thrower Fatima Whitbred, and she spoke of her tragic childhood, from being abandoned as a baby to being moved around various children's homes. It was quite a sad tale, to be honest, hence why I haven't included anything of it, because there was nothing really there to take the mick out of, and it would have been wrong to do so. But that won't stop the goon that is Lee Anderson using her story as a weapon with which to wallop transgender sports people. Yeah. What a guy.
Today's athletes and the nonsense that we hear with these, you know, these men that, well, are born men that transition into women and all of a sudden decide they want to compete in women's sports. I mean, have you got an opinion on that, Gary?
Yeah, it's not fair, is it? Let's be fair about it. That's just not fair. If they want to go over to a woman, that's fine, but then they should still compete in the men's sections. They shouldn't go over to a woman to compete. They're still going to be stronger, more testosterone.
More what, Gary? More what?
They're still going to be stronger, more testosterone.
Testosterone, right, yes, of course. Testosterone, right. I see. See, I didn't know that. I always thought men had more testosterone than women. But it turns out they have more testosterone. If I'd have known that, I may have been more hostile to transgender women. As far as I'm aware, they take medication which suppresses their testosterone. But if they've still got more testosterone, then, yeah, there's an argument for them not competing in women's sports. Boy, I learned so much from Gary. He's just a guru. They call him the knowledge, and now I know why.
You just can't do that. It's not fair on anyone.
You know, I noticed some sports, Gary, as you probably know, are making a stand against this. And you know, as this nonsense does continue, more and more people are coming out saying this is absolute rubbish. And by the way, people get shut down for saying this. It is nonsense. Look, if you're born a man and you develop as a man, you're going to be much stronger physically. We know that. I know some people don't like to hear that, but that's just a fact of biology and it's a fact of nature. And I'm of the mind that women should compete against women and men should compete against men. It's as simple as that. Don't you agree, Gary?
Yeah, or, Lee, why don't they have a transgender?
Well, there you go. A completely...
Instead of let men do men, women do men, and have a transgender games. So then it's all fair across the board.
Oh, there...
On a serious note, most women transitioning to men and men transitioning to women do so to be recognised and accepted as that gender. They don't transition to be stuck in some kind of halfway house between the two genders. So the idea of a transgender games is truly rotten. Unfortunately, the issue of transgender folk competing in sports is and always will be a contentious issue, and not one that is going to be solved by Lee Anderson and Gary the cabbie.
There you go. I mean, this is why I get in the cab with Gary every single Friday, because that man is dripping with common sense.
Well, no, the main reason is you need a lift to the pub, and he's dripping in something. I'm not sure it's common sense.
He's just brought out or introduced a new common sense solution where, you know, if you want to compete, if trans athletes want to compete, don't compete against the men or the women, compete against other trans athletes. It's as simple as that. That's a good solution, that is, guy. But don't go away. Coming up next, we have the man who is riddled with common sense. That's the king of common sense crusade, Calvin Robinson.
Is it me, or are Gary the cabbie segments getting shorter every week? It seems like Lee Anderson is running out of red meat to throw to Gary, so he's having to ration it sparingly every week. Moving on. Any episode of Lee Anderson's Real World wouldn't be complete without a dig at the BBC. This time he has invited the phony religious nutter that is Calvin Robinson to join him. Vince Cable is the left in the corner, as you can see. Oh, and in the first couple of seconds, keep an eye on the human toad that is Mark Francois waving farewell to his job at the next general election in the background. Let's have a look.
There is another organisation within this country that seems to be, at the moment, the official opposition to, and it has since I got elected, and that's the BBC.
Yeah.
Now, they seem at every opportunity to poke their nose in. We saw it this week or last week with the Coots situation, the Farage situation. It's very quick to put the boot in there. And we see some of their presenters, their newsreaders, you know, tweeting all sorts of nonsense and not being that, that anti-Beeb that I grew up with, that impartial organisation.
Yeah. I was on the Beeb. It was a real tough ride because they like to live in that echo chamber. They like to be in that metropolitan liberal elite bubble where they think they're morally superior to the rest of us, and they like to lecture us plebs on how to live our lives.
Right. Vince, you're a little bit older than me, so you've obviously over the years seen the changes within our media back to the days of 3 channels. That's certainly what it was like when I was growing up in the 70s. And I always harp on about the BBC being, in the 70s and 80s, a place of comfort. It was anti-Beeb. It was an organisation that reassured you there was no bias. It was impartial. You never knew in your wildest dreams which way a presenter would vote, or because there's no social media then. Do you think it's changed over the years and become a little bit biased or too political?
I think this stuff about the BBC being some kind of left-wing organisation is completely wrong. I mean, I used to come under a lot of pressure as somebody who was centre-left, Lib Dem. They would attack me just as impartially as they did people from the other side. No, I think they fall over backwards, actually.
Can I propose something to you? That it's not left-wing, and no one's saying that it's left-wing. It's not left-wing, it's not right-wing, it's metropolitan liberal elite. It's that Westminster bubble, it's that London environment that's different to the rest of the country.
What a load of shite. What the hell is this programme? If everything the BBC produces is metropolitan liberal elite, Westminster bubble, what the hell is this? It has about 10,000 viewers left. Okay, let's say the BBC is liberal elite, metropolitan bubble, blah blah blah, whatever it was, whatever this crap he comes out with. Let's say that it is. It's still well viewed. People watch it. Nobody watches this crap apart from me. And then people watch me watching this crap.
Well, they did have a very strong kind of regional infrastructure, and they've been trying to keep it, and they should. You know, they should have a lot of very strong, you know, regional television and radio. So I don't buy that either, actually.
Okay, Vince. So I'm going to wrap that up because I want to go from one woke organisation to three woke organisations because it's my favourite part of the show now, which is Wokey of the Week, Kelvin. You're going to be the judge.
All right.
Okay, just to recap, this is the 5th edition of Wokey of the Week. Winners so far, and I've written them down so I don't have to rely on my brain because it's melted anyway during this drivel. James O'Brien, Gary Neville, Transport for London, and the reigning champion, the Archbishop of York. What a list. So, yeah, let's get straight into it.
So we've got three contestants this week. We've got Waterstones. The customers are accusing them of not being able to find the works of Sharon Davis and other gender-critical feminists on their bookshelves. That's the first one. Obviously, we've got Coots Bank with the debacle over Nigel Farage and Snow White, it says here. The new movie refers to dwarves as magical creatures. Now, you're not a dwarf. You must be 6 foot tall.
I barely fit through the doors. I think forget the Snow White thing. We can
let's cross that off.
That's
cross that off.
Waterstones is an issue because they're trying to gatekeep knowledge. If we can't look at gender-critical books, if we can only look at books that they think are appropriate, that's quite a scary prospect, especially for young people. But Coots is the ultimate winner in my eyes because without banking, we're not able to engage in civil society.
So thanks for that, Kelvin. Coots the Bank are the winner. Kelvin's choice this week. This is a trophy, Kelvin.
Love it.
This is Wokey of the Week. I think it's a fair winner. So, yeah, it's a good choice. And if you're looking, Coots, this will be on your cabinet by the end of the week. So, look, after the break...
Is there any evidence whatsoever from anybody with any credibility Waterstones are hiding the books of Sharon Davis? That whole story probably came from one whinging turd on Twitter. Oh, X. Sorry, X. Anyway, let me write that down. Who was that? I've forgotten already. Coots, of course it was. Fucking hell. Anything to crawl up the arse of Nigel Farage, eh? And the very last part of this episode, we are going to watch Fatima Whitbred pulling a pint. Because why not? We've made it this far. I appreciate this has been a really long one. But yeah. Who cares? Right, so I'm not going to go through the entire list, but Fatima Whitbred has a score of 9.5 to beat. That is what Tom Skinner clocked on the chalkboard last week. So let's see whether she can do it. Oh, I am on tenterhooks here.
We're going to pull in another legend here, which is this young lady here. I grew up watching this lady. Come on in, Fatima. She's look at this legend here.
I'm going to join you in your man cave here. Yeah.
Now, it's on the pull. So every week we get a top personality, like yourself, to come and pull a pint of beer, and we score you out of 10.
Wow.
Now, we've been looking at these electric pumps, Fatima, and I've seen the size of your biceps, and I think it would be cheating to allow you to do the electric one. So we've got you on the hand pull.
Hand pull.
So pint pot in your own time.
Here we go.
You've got to beat. I think we had Tommy Skinner last week. He got 9.5. So Tommy, if you're watching, I predict you're going to get hammered today.
Well, we're going to give it a good go. We're going to go for the doom bar.
The doom bar.
So let's have a go.
Hold on. Hold on a minute. That's an ale. There's no carbonation in there. The rest of them have been pulling lager and have been defeated by the carbon dioxide. This isn't fair. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to call bullshit, but this is bullshit.
Oh. You've done this before, haven't you?
I actually worked behind the bar for my Thurrock hockey club at the Rafa. So.
Oh, look here.
Yeah, we're going.
This is a traditional beer, this is.
There you go.
You just stick it on the bar, Fatima.
Oh.
Look at that.
Well done.
Cheers.
Wow.
I didn't see anything wrong with it.
I mean...
So you've got to get a 9 at least.
A 9?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm going to add another 0.5 on top of that, so I think
Hey.
you're going to be jointly. So that's a 9.5. We've got the blackboard somewhere. It's here. So...
I want to deduct her a point for not returning the pump to its natural position. Can you see that? You can't leave it like that. That's a joke. It's a disgrace. Sorry. Getting a little too passionate here.
I'm going to put it on there, Fatima. And somebody's had the good sense to put MBE at the bottom as well. Did you put that on?
Yeah.
So 9.5. So I think at some stage, GB News, we're going to have to, if Fatima and Tommy Skinner end up being joint winners...
Don't put it back now, Fatima. It's too little too late, love. You've lost your point. From me, anyway. And it was an ale. Give her a 5.
Probably we're going to have some
Knockout system.
Knockout system. Maybe a throw-off of the javelin, what would you say?
No, I think I'd win that one somehow. Yeah, no, it's good. I actually enjoyed doing that. Thank you, Vince.
Great.
Nice score.
Well done, 9.5. Well, massive thanks to Sir Vince Cable and...
God, that was so awkward at the end there. I really enjoyed doing that. Thanks, Vince. Nice score. It's such shit television. I'm rubbing my eyes in horror. That'll do it for another week. That being said, I've got 2 more of these things to get through before the week's out in order to catch up. So, yeah. And I'm going to do it, by the way. Lucky you. I'll try and keep them shorter next time, though, but there was lots to say this time. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you again soon. Cheers.